Welcome back to another episode of Georgia Sports Nation. We got some more Hawks and Braves content on the way for you guys today. Big news around the NBA. Jake Fisher's been on a roll right now. He's been reporting of a senior reporter at Yahoo Sports. Just released a piece focusing on DeJounte Murray and a lot of other guys on the Hawks, a number of stars around the league. Who's on the trade block, what's their value, and who's potential suitors for them around the league. So we're going to be discussing our thoughts on those, what he said about the Hawks players, as well as previewing the Hawks tomorrow versus Indiana. Let's see if they can get some revenge after the shellacking they took up in Indiana last week. And then for the last 10, 15 minutes of the show, also talking about Max Fried and the Braves. They agree on a $15 million arbitration contract. Let's see if that can make some good rapport between Fried's party and the Braves organization. So hopefully he can sign an extension and remain a Brave for a lot longer than this last season. But we got Matt up here, frequent speaker on We Talk Hawks TV. Matt, what was your initial reactions when reading some of this stuff reported by Jake Fisher and other reporters around the league during trade deadline season right now?
It didn't really surprise me. I think that for the most part, most would agree that Quinn Snyder's style of play doesn't really fit the roster, particularly the backcourt. You need a spacer next to Trae, somebody that can, as a movement shooter, somebody that can move the ball. And Murray just doesn't really fit a lot of those key tenets that you would look for. And then as it relates to the rest of the roster, kind of that quick decision, that 0.5-second mentality that Quinn has tried to install for the rest of the team, a lot of the players on the team just don't fit that mindset and don't fit that ability. So switching out a couple of pieces makes sense, especially that we haven't been able to play 500 basketball for at least a month now, probably two. You kind of saw some changes coming as we try to adapt the roster to better fit Quinn and Landry's DNA.
Yeah, Landry's always doing that Hawks DNA phrase. I think probably the biggest shocker to me of what Jake reported just now in a space with Hawks Fan TV. And by the way, if you guys missed that, definitely go check it out. It is recorded, so just search Hawks Fan TV in that space. You'll be able to listen to it. I think the most surprising thing was that the Hawks are aggressively trying to get rid of a lot of guys. They're the ones calling other teams like the Warriors, the Pistons, the Knicks, the Sixers. The Lakers have obviously reached out to everybody. They're always going to do that. But the Hawks have notoriously been not that aggressive at the trade deadline under this front office and over the last few seasons. But it seems like this year it's going to be a different story. He reported. We'll get into some specific players later. But first, I do want to begin with the elephant in the room, DeJounte Murray. It seems more and more likely as we get to that February 8th deadline that he's going to get traded. That didn't seem likely to begin the season. But losing, like I said, can change a lot of things. And I think that's been the biggest reason why the Hawks are seemingly prioritizing DeJounte as the biggest guy to trade as soon as possible. I think one is because they need to make Jalen the second option. They need to be sure to see what they have in him. And then second, I think the biggest reason, offensively, you can say it doesn't fit and all that, but he's done a good job, in my opinion, of adjusting to what Quinn wants him to do. Now, he's not enjoying it. That's not how he likes to play. But I think the biggest reason is defensively. He's just not a good point of attack defender. And when you have a backcourt of Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, you need a guy like a taller guard, maybe 6'5", 6'6", who's able to handle the rock a little bit, play good point of attack defense, and just stay in front of their man next to Trae, as we all know, who's not going to be the greatest defender. Even though this year he has given that effort on the defensive end, like people have asked.
Right. And then also, we kind of knew that this wasn't an ideal fit. You needed to be able to win for this backcourt to stay together, and they just haven't been able to play effectively together. And quite frankly, when Trae's off the floor, there just haven't been those minus Trae minutes are bad overall for the season. And I think DeJounte Murray is a good player, but I just think the fit is not a great fit. in Atlanta. And I think if you pivot off of him and move him for pieces that better fit the roster need, like a wing, like a backup center, possibly a backup point guard, and a pick or two, I think that's more conducive to what you're trying to build in year 2 and year 3 for Quinn.
Out of any of the deals that have been reported or rumored, do you have a favorite or one that you would say, okay, if you're the Hawks, I'm accepting this deal? You know, there's always those thrown out. You know, the Knicks and Lakers have been some of the ones that have been thrown out before.
I mean, for me, I would prioritize probably the Knicks, Quentin Grimes, and a filler and a pick or two. I like Quentin Grimes. I've liked Quentin Grimes for a while. We tried to get him for the Cam Reddish, in the Cam Reddish deal. I think as a backup point guard, that would be perfect. And then eventually, he could probably start the rest of this season. But looking forward, thinking about Kobe Buffkin coming in, and you want to slide in Kobe, and having Grimes off the bench, and then you can use that pick coupled with either a player or the additional picks that we have this year. We have 2 firsts, and you can move that for additional depth pieces that you need.
Yeah, I think Kobe Buffkin's been going under the radar lately. I know, Matt, you've been really high on Kobe Buffkin. I like the pick. I wasn't as high on him as you were, but I think he's been really good in the G League. Leading the G League in scoring right now, and he's unfortunately he's got a little bit of a back injury right now, but I can't wait to see him try and get a consistent role at the NBA level, because if it's anything like what he's done at the G League, the Hawks are in for a special type of talent.
Yeah. He's a very good player. What I like, he's instinctual. So, he has a very good feel for the game. He kind of knows what the team needs in the moment. They need scoring, they need defense, they need rebounds, they need steals. And he can kind of, fit that mold for what the team needs at that moment. And I think that, and he's a good shooter. And so I think that instinctual feel, the ability to get to the rim as consistently as he does, something that is, a majorly glaring from Murray's game, is something that I think is a really good fit when they draft him. That's a really good fit next to Trae if he pops. And so, I think you're already seeing a little bit in Quinn Snyder's system that they kind of run with the Skyhawks, that he's going to be a good fit next to Trae.
Yeah, I hope that pans out. And you mentioned the Grimes deal. I'm definitely with you on that one. Unless the Warriors could give the Hawks, say, Kuminga and a Podziemski, or Kuminga and a Moses Moody, which I don't see them doing. I don't think that there would be an offer from, say, the Lakers or the Pistons that could trump what Grimes and 2 firsts. Obviously, you'd throw in a Von Fournier in that deal for salary filler, but I don't think a deal can trump, because Grimes helps the team now. You can start Grimes in the future. Buffkin, he just turned 20, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, he just turned 20. So right now, you if you're going to try and win, even starting next season in 2024, you're not going to want to throw Buffkin into the fire starting at that shooting guard position. You're probably going to want to bring him off the bench, maybe as a backup point guard either, or a shooting guard. See what happens. And then you could have Grimes start for a lot of years. He's only 22, and you saw what type of defense he can play in the playoffs last year. What he did to Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, as the Knicks really beat the tires off the Cavs in that first round last year. But yeah, I think that Knicks deal is definitely the best one I've seen so far.
Yeah, I would agree. It gives us what we need now and in the future. And like I said, that pick is really important, because you're probably not going to keep the pick, but what you could do is put it with a player, package it, and you could go out and go get other things that you're missing.
Yeah, I think that's an underrated aspect that you brought up, because these picks, the Hawks are probably it's been said by multiple reporters actually, that the Hawks are looking for a lot of draft compensation when looking for deals for DeJounte Murray. They probably won't end up using a lot of those picks on draft players. They're going to trade them, like you said, because they don't want to rebuild. They want to retool this roster around players like Trae, like Jalen, like Onyeka Okongwu. He's not untouchable, but I do think they would like to include him in his long-term plans, as well as Bogey. They're obviously going to shop Bogey and see what type of deals they can get for him. But yeah, Jake Fisher reported today that Bogey's value is pretty much at the level of DeJounte Murray. That's how good he's been for the Hawks this year. So That's good to hear if you're the Hawks in terms of so you can set his price and kind of filter out through the offers that you're getting for both those guys.
Right. I mean, I knew Bogey, value would be high. I have my issues with Bogey, but you can't deny the shooting ability. And I could see why that could be enticing for a playoff team or a team that desperately needs shooting. To bring him on as a
A team
veteran.
like the Magic, for example, that sticks out to me. Like
Right,
they
right.
need perimeter shooting really badly. They have
Mhm.
a plethora of picks. They also have so many good young defenders that they could throw at the Hawks. So if they make an offer you can't refuse, if you're Landry Fields, I think I'm a big Bogey guy. I know there are some a lot of guys in the fan base that are too as well. But I think you do have to make that move though, considering where the organization is and where the team is at right now.
Right. I was thinking of Houston as well. Houston is another team that needs perimeter shooting. And I would see Ime Udoka having an interest in a player like Bogey. So that makes a ton of sense as well.
Southside, we're just talking about what Jake Fisher reported today in a space with HFTV. He also came out with a piece just before 2 p.m. Eastern writing about DeJounte Murray and kind of where the Hawks are at in terms of who are they trading. So DeJounte was the first player we discussed. I want to shift things over to Clint Capella because there are a lot of people who has mixed feelings about Clint Capella. Now, if you look at his stats this year, he's really not having that bad of a season if you just look at the box score. But I think if you look past that, he's not the same guy he was when the Hawks made the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years ago. He's still a great rebounder, top 4 in the league, easy in my opinion, easily. But in my opinion, just like I said with DeJounte, you need to make room for Jalen Johnson, and Capella clogs up the lane that little bit. And if you have a starting set, if you have Onyeka Okongwu on the roster at such a team-friendly deal, right now you need to see what he can do in 30 plus minutes.
Exactly. You saw some of that last night. Him playing plus minutes with JJ. Those two look like a force together. And with Okongwu, I really believe him getting 30 plus minutes a night will help with some of the issues that some fans complain about: the rebounding, the fouling, all those things. I think will get kind of washed away if he plays more minutes. And he's out there with the regular starters. He's out there, getting real rotation minutes in different situations, as opposed to long stretches. Like now, he plays a 7-minute stretch, a 10-minute stretch, a 12-minute stretch. So I think with him starting more, you will get more, plus minutes. You'll get better lineups, and then defensively, his ability to switch on the perimeter. While it's been inconsistent throughout the year, the last I would say 3 weeks he's been coming on very strong, and so uh, if Capella had any type of value to a team, Memphis, if Ja didn't get hurt, I could think that's a team that you can really sell Capella to as Steven Adams light type of player as far as the rebounding and the block shots. And then you could get something, maybe if it's not even a first, you can get something of value for him. But, to hear that he's not, he's not worth really anything, is disappointing because you had an opportunity maybe at the draft to trade him, but now it sounds like you may have to either attach some seconds to him to get off of him, or you might just have him come off the bench if Okongwu continues to play like he's doing.
Yeah, I want. I wonder if the Hawks do make a move like that, putting a Okongwu in the starting lineup, or just playing a Okongwu more minutes. Not even necessarily have to start, just playing him more minutes up straight up than Capella. Because if Jake's right and the value around the league is that he's not who he once was, then it was a pretty good big mess up from the front office not trading him. And obviously in the offseason last year, there was some deals at the draft that specifically with Mavericks, Davis Bertans 15 and Clint Capella, or sorry, no, 15 and Clint Capella for Davis Bertans and the Mavericks 10th pick. That was on the table. It seemed like the Hawks said no to that. Looking back on that deal, Matt, would you do that now?
Um, I think I would. I think I would. Now, the question is, do you view do you view Kobe as a lottery pick, right? Because I think it's pretty clear that's who they will target. That's who they were targeting throughout the process. Once you hear some other things coming out of that draft process, how they tried to get him into Atlanta numerous times, they couldn't. They actually flew to another city. Landry and Kyle and Quinn flew to another city to watch him go through a pre-draft workout because that's how much they liked him. So, uh, do you view him as a lottery pick, or do you feel like you could get really strong value with him at 15? It just depends on how you view Kobe.
So you think it was more of a question on Buffkin in rather than just getting off Capella?
Right, right, right. Do if I trade up to 10, do I still take the guy that I want, or do I take the consensus guy in Lively at 10? And now, if this DeJounte Murray thing kind of disintegrates and falls apart, I'm kind of, stuck. So I think it was a long term view as opposed to a short term view. Long term meaning like I need somebody who I think is a really good fit next to Trae, as opposed to a short term value where yes, I will get Lively and he's an upgrade from Capella as far as the length and size, but he needs time to develop, and so it's a balance for sure. But I think they made the right decision in terms of staying at 15 and getting Kobe. The more interesting pieces, well, maybe could you have traded Capella maybe in the back half of the draft and got a pick in the similar to what Sacramento did when they traded Dallas and Sacramento when they traded the
Yeah,
24th pick. Could you have done that later in the draft, or could you trade them for some seconds and a filler? So that's I think where more of the questions lie with me as opposed to the draft.
gotcha. And also at the draft, there were talks about trading DeAndre Hunter. Now, but we know DeJounte is the number one priority from all the reporting, all the rumors going on. But Jake Fisher said the next highest trade or likelihood trade candidate that he would put is DeAndre Hunter. Now, obviously, the Hawks definitely missed Hunter on the defensive end. He's a great defensive organizer, especially at that back line. He helps a lot there. But offensively, it's always been a question for him, and the health is obviously the biggest thing when it comes to Hunter. Do do I think that the Hawks will say we need to get off Hunter like they will say a Capella or a Murray right now? No, but I do think it would be wise to do so just because you need to. I just don't think he fits for what Quinn wants to do, and also you need to figure out what this core can do because the core of Trae, DeAndre, Capella, those guys haven't really got it done in terms of what they wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that core has run its course. And I really feel it wasn't the intent for them all to play together, that core to stay together this long. I mean, yes, they made the conference finals run a few years ago, but a consolidation breakup is something that I thought was coming at least for a year now. And so, keep Jalen, keep Trae, keep Oyeka, ideally if you can, see what you have in Kobe, possibly slide in Kobe, and then filter everything else around that group. And so I think that's how you get the best out of what we have currently with Quinn. But, you know, I'm a huge Dre fan. But I think it's kind of clear whether it's injuries, whether it's fit, whether whatever the case may be, it's just not working anymore with him here. And so I think getting him in a new environment, could be beneficial for both parties.
Yeah, I was thinking about a potential deal with the Warriors. Now, obviously, DeAndre Hunter doesn't fit what the Warriors want to do in terms of the offensive end. But Jonathan Kuminga, he's expressed his frustrations with Steve Kerr. He wants a bigger role.
Mm-hmm.
He would have that, and the Hawks are reportedly interested in him. He would have that with the Hawks if the Warriors traded for DeAndre Hunter. But that the deal centered around that, and DeJounte Murray has been linked to the Warriors as well. A deal centered around Murray wouldn't allow Kuminga to have really an enlarged role here. I think it would take trading Dre, and obviously Jalen Johnson's going nowhere. It would take trading DeAndre Hunter for Kuminga to really have that increased role he wants. And I just don't see the Warriors wanting to get DeAndre Hunter on their team.
Yeah, I could. I could see that. And then plus, with Kuminga, you got to make a decision on if you're going to pay him in the next year. So he's similar to Bay in that regard, as far as what I'm going to do with him long term. Am I going to pay him? How long is this fit going to work? Take the work. With Jalen's on ball emergence, where does that leave Kuminga as far as his role? Does he want more shot attempts? Does he actually want the ball in his hands? How is that defined? So I like Kuminga, but I think it's clear we kind of need a reset with our wing depth in our wing position.
Yep. And then also he discussed AJ Griffin. I know you're not that high on AJ, but Jake Fisher said there were a lot of people that are interested in AJ Griffin. His value is, quote, a lot from Fisher in terms of just because he's on that rookie contract, still only 20 years old. What he did in his rookie season. Obviously, he's been in the doghouse now with Quinn Snyder not being in the rotation. But do you think the Hawks will make it a priority to get off AJ? Because in my opinion, I don't think so.
I won't use the word priority. I would say, he might be a byproduct of we just kind of need a reset at that position, like I said, and Bogey is playing well. So where does his minutes come from? You got to integrate Kobe into the system. You got to, Bogey still playing at a good level. Do you play him at the 2? Do you play him at the 3? And then if you play him at the 2, I don't really see minutes. It's kind of murky there. And then if you play him at the 3, obviously his defense is a major problem.
Yeah.
And so is his shooting good enough to offset the problems that he'll have defensively? It's kind of the question for AJ. I think if I'm not super high on AJ, but I think he's still worth a first round pick. If you can get that for him.
Oh yeah, I think he's probably worth. Well, he essentially is a first round pick. He's almost a rookie, and he's only 20 years old, still in that rookie contract. So essentially, like, he still is a first rounder, pretty much.
Like, I was speaking about Orlando earlier, right? If I trade him to Orlando for maybe, let's just say, I know the money isn't quite exact, but let's say Jonathan Isaac in the first round pick, something like that, right? I think that could be enticing for both sides. Him getting on a young up and coming team in Orlando, and then Atlanta getting a more defensive stout wing player who's a very good rebounder and an all around kind of switchable defender. Granted that he stays healthy.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, obviously people have been frustrated with Hunter's injury side. If they got Isaac, that would be another thing to worry about there. But Isaac, before he's had all these injuries, definitely was a top 10 consensus NBA defender. I mean, he was really good on that end. So hopefully he can return to that if the Hawks could trade for him. So we've gone over DeJounte, DeAndre, Capella, AJ. Let's talk a little bit about Bogey here, because what Jake said earlier in the space was he said they'll look to shop offers for Bogdanovic when I asked him about him. But I think he said something around the lines of they're not looking to trade him, but if an offer is there, they'll entertain it, just because he fits, I think, just a ton of what Quinn Snyder and Trae want to do. And he's had a good season this year. In my mind, he's the sixth man of the year. And when you've got a guy like that who fits what the coach wants to do, you try to keep him there long term, unless there's a trade package that, like, say that there's like 2 first round picks in like a player for Bogey. Now, I don't think that ever happened, but you definitely entertain that deal or something like that. But I don't see the Hawks trading Bogey just because of how much he fits what they want to do.
I think I wouldn't necessarily say they're entertaining. That means like they're actively shopping. I won't say that. What I will say is you got to make a decision. How long is this retool going to take? Is it going to take this deadline? Is it going to take the summer? Is it going to take through next deadline? And you're for sure after next deadline, you're going to be ready. How long is it going to take? Because if you think it's going to take until the start of next season, then I would keep him. But if you
Yeah.
think this thing is going to take a year and a half or so to get it right, I would seriously consider moving him because you don't want the Capella situation where he has a knee flare up or his shot isn't, quite what it was before. It takes kind of a nosedive given his age and everything else, that now you're losing value and you're sunk in the contract because of the price point and how long it is. And so I think you gotta make a determination how long this is going to take, and you got to be purposeful in terms of following through with that plan.
Yeah, Southside says, yeah, unless the offer is amazing, I don't see us getting rid of Bogey. I agree with that. And also Bogey's contract, what was it? 11 million for 3 years. That's a very friendly contract for the production, especially this year, that Bogey's giving you. So I think you can afford to keep him. But yeah, that's a good point. Is the Hawks front office, and they never really came out and said something along the lines that would hint of this. But how long is this remodel / retool going to take? Because they're not rebuilding. They're not going to trade Trae. They're not trading Jalen. Some of these guys that they want to build around, but they are remodeling the roster around them. So how long is it going to take? Is an interesting part that I think Hawks fans at this point is just all trying to guess. To be honest.
Right, and they haven't come out and said that. I'm curious at the deadline. You know this better than I do, Mikey. Landry would come out and speak a lot around the deadline, as they do every year.
Yeah.
And I want to hear. You hear things privately, but you want to hear it publicly. How long do you anticipate this taking? And is this something that you kind of foresaw all along, that you were just going to try to roll it out there, see what happened, and then, but in the back of your mind, you knew that this roster wasn't conducive to winning with Quinn immediately, that this was going to take a year and a half to try to get right? And so I would be very curious to hear what Landry has to say about that, and then really lay out what you're looking for as far as players as well. You have an idea. They talk about different, characteristics, different DNA that they value, but what does that actually look like as far as a player? Do you have a player or two in mind? That could you describe them? How are you going to go about acquiring them? Is it the draft? Is it free agency? Is it trade market? And what's your best guess about, blending everything together? Is it going to be on the fly? Is it going to be kind of, strip everything down and then come back up? How long is this going to be? And what does the process look like?
Yeah, Fields historically hasn't really came out and said anything of concrete, even close to anything of concrete value in terms of just specific details like that. But that would be good because it would put things a lot into perspective. Say this year was going different. They're about they flip flop their record. Say they're 21-15 instead of 15-21.
Mm.
Do you think this goes differently? Do you think they try to ride out this roster and keep DeJounte Murray? I think they would. And I don't think it would work long term. So in a way, it is a little bit of a blessing in disguise. Obviously, it's not the season we all hoped. I know you predicted the Hawks would have a great season this year under Quinn, but it's not really looking like that. So do you think that it was more of the plan all along, or do you think it was kind of like a fail-safe option right now?
I would say the latter. But then again, they tried to trade and get Siakam, right? And I'm almost certain there was going to be subsequent deals after that Siakam deal
Yeah.
to make it more of a flush fit. But going into the season, I did have high hopes for the team. I saw the work that Quinn was able to do in Utah. I think the disconnect came from how badly the team is kind of built for the modern NBA and what Quinn is trying to install and instill. And it's such a, contradiction because the team is small, right? It thrives on small ball and pace and shooting in theory, but when they go out and try to execute it, it looks clunky because the players don't really complement each other. And so is that something that I don't know if they had a true appreciation for how clunky the fit is until, maybe 10, 15 games into the season. And it's like, well, we were trying to make good great, but now we can't even get back to good at the moment. So, it's that's why I would love to hear Landry's perspective because it's very interesting. Like I said, for me, I think the roster has been disappointing as far as their fit, as far as their attention to detail and their sense of urgency every single night. But in the same breath, it's like, well, how much of that did they know before the season? And that's why they tried to get Siakam to try to skip this whole process.
Yeah, and there are some people, few fans out there that say they want to rebuild. I was interacting with some Hawks fans today that were saying this rock. You need to trade Trae. You need to build the roster around Jalen. And for me, Jalen he's going to be really good, right? I'm really high on Jalen Johnson, but you need a guy like Trae, an elite point guard, to develop Jalen's offensive game to the point where the Hawks need it to be for him to become the second best, or even would be greater, the best player on the team. He needs a point guard right now to do that. You can't just give the ball to Jalen every possession and say, okay, do your thing. Kind of, he's just not there yet, and I don't know if he'll ever get there. It'd be great for him to, but kind of you see the weaponry that the Hawks have when Trae and Jalen run the short roll. And Jalen's making decisions. He can impact the game in so many different ways. You saw that last night against the Sixers. I mean, Jalen finished with 25 points, 16 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 blocks. That was 3 assists shy of his first triple-double of his career. He impacts the game in so many different ways, but I think he needs a point guard like Trae right now to continue on this path.
I agree. And that's why I was telling some people earlier this year to kind of ease up a little bit as far as having, Jalen take over in the second half of games and things like that. I understand why people want that to happen given the size, and you can see he has the raw ability, but it hasn't quite been polished. And so you can blame whoever, Nyght or whomever, but I think having somebody like Trae developing his bag more, somebody can put him in the right position to use his length and size and agility is, going to be optimal in the short term. And then in the long term, if he can, develop a bag, be quicker a little bit in his decision making, and then defensively, moving his hips a little bit better, moving his feet a little bit better, he could kind of turn into an all-star level player because I think he has all-star level talent. It's just about developing it, cultivating it, and bringing it along.
Yeah, for me, Jalen, he's not a perfect player yet by any means. I mean, he's 22 years old. He's only going to get better. But I think the biggest area of development that I want to see from Jalen is screen navigation. He still struggles, gets caught on a lot of screens. A lot like a lot of people on the Hawks do. Hunter's a good defender, but his screen navigation isn't good as well. DeJounte Murray's screen navigation isn't good either. One guy that is good though is Quentin Grimes, like we were talking about earlier. So his fit continues to be just look really good on paper. So if the Knicks deal does go down, DeJounte goes to Madison Square Garden, and Quentin Grimes comes back here along with a couple first-round picks, I'd be really interested to see this Hawks team defensively with a guy like Grimes, because after the deadline, say they do get off Capella and Murray, they keep DeAndre Hunter. The defensive line, you have a lineup of Trae Young, Quentin Grimes, Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Hunter, and Onyeka Okongwu. I think defensively that lineup would be a lot better than the current Hawks lineup. And I think some fans haven't looked really at what Grimes could do on that defensive end yet. But I think he's largely underrated by a lot of fans outside of who's looked at the situation in New York, just because of Tom Thibodeau's kind of traditions of what he does when a player asks for a little more uses. He says, "Nope, you can get the usage on the bench."
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I've been a fan of Grimes since he was at Kansas. So I've always liked him. I thought he was a good player. Um, Now, me personally, do I think he's a long term option at the two next to Trae? No, but like I
Hmm.
said, that's why you're bringing Kobe along slowly. But I think I agree. I think if he's at the two, the overall defense improves overnight.
Yeah,
He's a much better point of attack defender than Murray is, and his screen navigation is very good, unlike what we have currently.
yeah. There was. I tried to get the clip before the show started, but there is a clip on Twitter of him defending Malcolm Brogdon a couple games ago. The screen navigation is on full display in that on Twitter. You can easily see him becoming the better defender that he is. But I don't know. This season, the next month is going to be really interesting for the Hawks, just because you said the timeline, and I didn't even realize that, but they essentially have 4 years here too. Be on Trae's contract. That's a timeline that a lot of people say. And how long is he going to want this retooling slash remodeling of the roster to take? Because you don't want to upset him to the point where he leaves. Because if that happens, then you're back to square one, rebuilding, trying to get as many picks as possible. Which you don't want that to happen, because we've seen a couple of teams lately, the Wizards, the Pistons, um, these guys who are getting good draft picks, but they just don't always pan out like that.
Yeah, I agree. It's just usage. What's their usage rate? What's their implementation? And really, most importantly, what's their plan? Did you just get the best player available, but you don't really have a plan for that player? Or did you draft them with a plan in place to say, okay, these are the benchmarks and parameters we're expecting you to hit, and here's why? And so the why behind drafting a player or signing a player is really important, but often forgotten.
Yeah. I think one area where me and disagree, Matt, is that Grimes fit. I think Grimes can be a long-term fit at the two for the Hawks. Obviously, if Buffkin takes him over, that's great. It means we got a better player on our hands. But I think Grimes, the archetype of that type of player, just fits what you want next to Trae Young perfectly in the moment. He's a young NBA ready player to contribute. We saw that in the playoffs last season, like I mentioned before. So I don't want to like overhype Grimes and say he's this all NBA type defender who's going to start a star player. But I think he just fits the perfect mold of the type of player you want in the backcourt next to Trae Young. But as we move on here, I do want to preview a little bit tomorrow's game, Hawks versus the Pacers at State Farm Arena. The last time the Hawks versus the Pacers, it was not pretty. Let me just say that the Pacers absolutely smacked the Hawks, and that was with Tyrese Halliburton. Unfortunately, Tyrese Halliburton went down with a grade 1 hamstring strain, and I hate that for the Pacers. They were having such a good season. Especially Tyrese Halliburton was on track to start the All-Star game in his hometown at Indiana. So that's unfortunate. But can the Hawks take advantage of his being out? What are your keys to the game as far as getting the win tomorrow and building off a gritty win that they got last night against the 76ers? Matt, you there?
Tomorrow, sorry.
You're good.
Tomorrow's game you asked me about.
Yeah, against the Pacers.
See, I feel good about that game. I have us winning that game. I think Tyrese being out helps. No, no lie about that. And I think that they were so embarrassed last game that we played them. I think Trae and them, they got to be thinking we got to get our get back. Because that was one of the worst games probably in Trae's career
Oh,
overall.
it had to be.
So I'm thinking, they're going to come back with a little bit of, vengeance, a little bit of aggressiveness. So I take tomorrow. I have tomorrow as a victory.
Yeah, I hope they win. I mean, they really need it, especially for the confidence, like last game you were saying. But one thing that I think is going to get overlooked a little bit by Pacers fans and fans around the league, Halliburton being out actually upgrades the Pacers defense. He's been a really bad defender. Now they're going to be playing TJ McConnell, one of my favorite role players of all time in the NBA. I love I love what he does. So he's going to be a good defender. He's going to play the majority of point guard minutes. He's not going to start though. He's going to defend Trae, and I think one of the biggest keys that the Hawks have to do is know who to attack, but also limit second chance points. Miles Turner, something that Clint Capella can watch. Miles Turner does an excellent job of when he gets a second chance rebound, he'll try and put it up, but if it's not there, he's going to kick it out to an open shooter. And the Pacers have a plethora of open shooters: Benedict Mathurin, Buddy Hield, Aaron Nesmith. They had Halliburton, obviously, Andrew Nemhard, Jalen Smith can shoot it from the perimeter. Miles Turner can do it himself. So these guys can all shoot the three ball really well. That's why they lead the league in second chance points. A lot of their offensive rebounds lead to open three. So the Hawks really have to do a good job on the glass tomorrow to keep those second chance points from hurting them.
Agreed. And, I didn't think I would agree with Mike, but, in the fourth quarter, especially without Halliburton, it's okay to, not slow the pace down to a crawl, but be more thoughtful and selective in the shots that they take. You know, and maybe not feature one guy if he doesn't have it going, kind of hoping he gets it going, but spread the ball around, be more diverse, and kind of attack the rim to try to get Miles in foul trouble, and then you can kind of spread them out and play more up and down.
Yeah, I like the fact that last night against or yeah, it was last night against the Sixers. The Hawks were getting the rebound and still running with maybe like 3 to 2 minutes to go. Now, obviously, inside 2 minutes, it's going to naturally slow down. But the Hawks had a lead, about a 5-point lead with 3 minutes left, and they were still going up and down the court after the rebound, playing at a fast pace. That's still what they have to do. Obviously, you don't need to go up and down the floor like a crazy person. You're still going to slow the game down a bit, maybe take an extra 7-8 seconds off the shot clock. But don't try to get into your actions with just 10 seconds left on the 24. You need to keep playing fast, because as a small team, when you get into a half court game, it's just easier for defenses to stop you. So I think the Hawks really could benefit from just keep playing fast and try not to score their opponents. Now it makes no sense really to say that, just because, or not no sense, but a lot of fans will say you need to put in your best defensive guys when you have the lead with a minute left, because that's how you're going to win championships on the defensive side of the ball. Now I know that's true, but with this specific Hawks team, they don't have a lot of those defending guys. So they need to win a lot of times, and it sucks to hear, but they need to win this game with their offense if it's in crunch time. Stop going iso ball, run their initial times, because Matt, we know this offense can score anytime they want to when they're actually running their sets and different plays.
Absolutely. And you saw that last night too. They got down a little bit, right? And then I know some people were nervous more than others, but I was never really concerned, because I said they can score whenever they want. So, it's about not being selfish in the last 5 minutes. It's about moving the ball around, making sure that everybody touches it, and so they could be involved and be active and participate. And, I think I think the Hawks, can play better basketball than what they've played, because it's not a wide margin between wins and losses.
No.
It's one or two plays every single game. And buckling down, making sure, that you don't have to fight so hard in the second half of the year to try to at least get to 500, is ideal. So if you can rattle off a few wins in a row and, maybe get to 18-21 or 17-21, I think it go a long way in the overall season.
Yeah, hopefully you give the front office some momentum heading into the trade deadline to say, okay, we're still going to remodel this roster. Don't get me wrong, but it's good that these guys are winning a little bit.
At the very least, it ups the trade value.
Yeah, it helps the trade value as well. Yeah, Blackheart says you're absolutely right. Winning with the offense is pretty much how this team is built right now. Defense just isn't cutting it, but better defensive effort is a must to go with that. Yeah, yeah. I thought that Pacers game up in Indiana was one of the few games actually of the season where they showed zero effort. In the Thunder game and the Cavs game as well on the road, those are two games that stood out to me as well. The Hawks just didn't come out with enough effort to win that night. But yeah, I think when your best perimeter defender is Trent Forrest, who's on a two-way contract, that's just how you have to win games with your offense. And when you're so one-sided like the Hawks are right now, you can't rely on ISO ball because if you miss two shots on the other end and on one end, the other team's probably scoring on you because the defense is just not good enough. So they need to keep running their sets. And as much as it is maybe hard to do for Quinn, for Trae, for DeJounte, this team is just built so weirdly that you need to keep running sets down the stretch, even though in most of today's NBA, it's ISO ball. The DeJounte, obviously, last game, he had a couple of possessions there at the end where it was just some really bad shots. Now Trae didn't have a great game overall either, but the possessions down the stretch really offensively in the fourth quarter were what bothered me. And then Jalen on Onyeka Okongwu, both of them really dominated this game at the end of it and overtime to help seal the victory. I think Jalen can really take advantage of something tomorrow, and that's mismatches because without Halliburton, the Pacers are a small team regardless. You're probably going to have McConnell on Trae Young, maybe Nesmith or Buddy Hield or Andrew Nembhard on DeJounte Murray. And if that's the case, Murray and Jalen are going to both have mismatches. If Jalen Smith misses this game for Indiana, Jalen Johnson is going to have a huge size mismatch on whoever's guarding him, besides Miles Turner, obviously. So they've got to go to Jalen. They have to include him and make sure he's a focal point in this offense if that's the case. But and then last, well, we went over. No, those are pretty much probably three keys to the game right there: rebounding, limiting their second chance points, attacking mismatches, and then keep playing at a fast pace. Don't let your offense slow down so much to a halt in the fourth quarter, to where it's a back and forth game and you have to play half court defense every time because you're letting the shot clock go down so much. Matt, you there?
Yeah. I agree with you. Oh, sorry, I was letting you finish. No, I agree with you. It's difficult, Mikey, because I think I don't know. Maybe I'm a homer. I just have so much faith in the roster and faith in what we could have done. To see what has transpired so far this year has been disappointing.
It's been disappointing for sure. And and by the way, injury report just came out. Aaron Nesmith is actually questionable for this game tomorrow.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that would be another forward that the Pacers might be without, making them an even smaller team.
Yeah. That's what I said. You kind of want to attack Turner and get him out, and then you're really small, and then you can kind of do what you did with Philadelphia with using JJ and things like that. Watching the game last night, being so happy with JJ and Onyeka, do you kind of change not necessarily DJ's responsibility, but do you kind of switch the offense more to favor JJ than DJ as far as like ball handling and who kind of brings the ball down the court and things like that?
I would like to see that, but as long as Murray's on the roster, I don't think you will. Just because not necessarily a showcase, but more of just NBA politics. DeJounte Murray is seen as a star around the league. He's definitely going to get those touches and those opportunities. Mm-hmm. But I do think that should be a priority for the Hawks at the deadline, getting to see what you have in Jalen Johnson and what he can do in the second option at just 22 years old. You need to see that for the future.
I agree. some of the step backs he hit last night was impressive.
Yeah, it was. He's had a few games now where it's just so refreshing to see somebody else other than Trae be able to put pressure on the rim consistently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With the ball in his hands. I mean, Okongwu can do it, Capella can do it, but obviously they need the ball off the pick and roll to do it. Blackheart says, yeah, this season's been a disappointment so far, but that win against the Sixers give me a little hope. I'm almost certain the Hawks will make some moves. Yeah, it definitely is heading in that direction. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's a lot of smoke right now about most of the Hawks roster. And a guy we really didn't talk about, I just remembered, is Saddiq Bey. Before I move on to a little Braves talk here at the end, let's do a little segment on Saddiq because this season's been weird for him. He started off okay, he didn't really shoot the ball a lot. He needed to keep shooting more threes. That's why he was brought here. And once he did that, throughout this past month, it's been a really cold stretch. His defense is really rough right now. It's been rough since he got here, really. But if he's not making shots, especially corner threes, it really hurts the Hawks as a whole.
Yeah. See, Saddiq, in my opinion, is caught between being that 3-and-D guy without the D and trying to expand his game and be more than just a shooter. And so I think he's having a hard time accepting what he is at the NBA level, which is kind of that spacer. I mean, obviously he's better than Garrison Matthews, but Garrison Matthews type player. You come in, you make some shots. He's a very good rebounder, by the way. But
yeah, he is. That he is. You can never question Saddiq Bey's hustle on both sides of the ball. Like he tries on defense, really. He's just not a good defender. But on offense, for sure, he crashes the boards pretty much every possession.
Yeah. So I just think he's caught between it because you saw that in Detroit as well, where it's like you throw it to him, shoot it, but he drives it to the rim over defenders, and it's a difficult contest, or he steps out of bounds. Those things, are for him something he struggled with since he got in the league. Just that decision making, when to shoot versus when to drive, and put pressure on the rim. So I think in a lot of ways you're getting a player that's still trying to figure himself out in a system that ideally would fit him. But the problem is he's trying to show that he's more than just a shooter.
Yeah, and he had to do that a lot. He had to do that a lot with Jalen out because obviously Jalen's not the biggest shooter. He's shooting 37% from three this year, which has been amazing. But a big thing with Jalen is he's the only guy other than Trae to put pressure on the rim. Now, when he went out, Saddiq needed to become that second guy to continue to drive the ball and worry about teams' bigs in the paint. Ever since Jalen went out or came back, Saddiq has not been able to shoot the ball, and I think that has a little bit to coincide with what Bey's shooting struggles are right now. Because at one point, Saddiq was 13 of 51 from his last 3-point shots. I mean, that is just for a shooter who's known around the league as a shooter. That's just something you don't hear a lot all the time.
Right. Yeah, so I think, and this is a contract year too, right? So him trying to show that he could be more versatile and interchangeable, and that will increase his value. Sounds like he should have probably took the deal that the Hawks offered him. Somewhere maybe between 14 to 16, somewhere in there. I think he's going to have a hard time on an open market getting a significant offer.
Yeah, he said he wanted a similar deal to Onyeka Okongwu in that $20 million range that we thought Onyeka was going to get if he headed into free agency. Obviously, we know Okongwu signed that team-friendly deal, but I don't know if anybody's going to give $20 million necessarily to a Saddiq Bey.
I don't see it. He's not the defender Dylan Brooks is. He's not the shooter Bogey is. So I just he's somewhere in the middle, and so I don't see it, but there seems that shock you every year about overpaying guys. You can make an argument did Cleveland overpay for Max Strus, and so there's surprises I would say every year. So maybe.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see if DeAndre Hunter comes back to the Hawks before he's traded, if he is. Saddiq Bey's obviously the candidate to go back to the bench there. What is his role going to be like? Because we saw Sadiq start the first 2 games of the season. Then Jalen started. And then it was kind of a back and forth. And then, Jalen ran away with the starting spot after that. But what is his role going to be like coming off the bench? Because when you have a lineup of Trae, Bogey, and Sadiq, and if you have Garrison Matthews out there, that lineup is so porous defensively that it's just really hard to compete with that. If they're not making shots, it's just not going to be good. So it's going to be interesting to see what his role looks like when he goes back to the bench, if Dre comes back and plays minutes for the Hawks on the court before or if he gets traded.
True. Yeah, you kind of maybe see what that looks like, him getting back on that bench, and then maybe his value can go up a little bit, because right now I would have to imagine his value isn't very high.
Yeah, I mean, the Hawks traded 5 second-round picks for him. Originally, I thought that was an overpay. Then he did a lot for us last year, and in that Miami game, he was huge, especially he and Bogey. But in the play-in last year, but he's been, I'd say, a disappointment so far this year. So let's see what his value is. But with that, Matt, I don't know if you want to stay for a bit of Braves talk, but for the last 5-10 minutes, kind of gonna discuss about Max Fried and his arbitration case, what that means going forward. So, did you want to stay for that?
I'm going to drop. That is over my. That's over my head. I appreciate it, Mikey. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right, Matt, I'll see you.
All right.
But yeah, so if you guys didn't get the news, Max Fried and the Braves, they both agreed on a $50 million deal in arbitration this year. And that's really good for 2 reasons. One, it's good to see the players and the organization agree. But more importantly, for the Max Fried specific case here, he's a free agent after the season. And all the rapport that you can have between both parties is going to be huge. I tend to think the Braves here lowered their salary to match what Max Fried wanted. Or sorry, I would hope to think the Braves raised their salary on what Max Fried wanted, because that's what they need to do to get an extension done. People think that Alex Anthopoulos is not going to give Max Fried what he wants in free agency. Historically, Freddie Freeman's left, Dansby Swanson's left in free agency. These big name free agents, the Braves have not been able to keep them, and they've still maintained success. But Max Fried, I think, is a totally different type of player that you need to prioritize to keep. Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson had a better year than Freddie last year. Orlando Arcia, all-star year at shortstop last season. But Max Fried is Max Fried. He's an ace, one type of pitcher. And yeah, while Spencer Strider's eventually going to become that ace, I still think you have Max Fried. He's definitely the more consistent pitcher right now. Strider still has those struggles where if you get bad Strider, it'll look really bad. But good Strider is dominant. I think you need to keep Max Fried out of those 2 players that I listed before as much as possible. Alex Anthopoulos, I'm looking at you really here to try to keep Max Fried and keep this core intact, because if he leaves, you got your rotation to Spencer Strider, Chris Sale, Charlie Morton. This might be his last season, and then Bryce Elder. I still have hope for Bryce Elder for sure. I think that the first half is more indicative of what he could be than the second half. But after that, after those three pitchers, really don't have anybody unless Hurston Waldrop comes up and really surprises everybody. AJ Smith-Shawver is still there as well. So you have young guys, but you don't know how they'll pan out or if it'll be that quickly. And injuries always a worry with starting pitching. You can never have enough of it. So I think Max Fried has to be the priority. Has to be a priority in terms of extending him, or if it gets to the point of him entering free agency, you've got to re-sign him, and he needs to be an Atlanta Brave, because he's going to want to try and go to the Dodgers as well. He's from Southern California, likes the hot weather. Obviously, Freddie Freeman's there. He wasn't in the organization when Jason Hay was there, but former Brave as well over there too. So that really needs to happen. Hey, Blackheart, yeah, I agree. We need to keep Fried. The rotation could be really good next year, and you can't have enough good pitching. Exactly. I think when you have a core of Max Fried, who's still younger, by the way, Spencer Strider, Chris Sale, Bryce Elder, then you have that fifth starter as one of the young guys, Hurston Waldrop, You don't know what Waskari Noah is going to give you. Darius Vines is still there. AJ Smith-Shawver. Then you can have that fifth starter guy as a guy you can say, okay, which one of the young guys is going to step up? But I wouldn't want two of those to be filled by the young guys. I think one is sufficient there, and you need Max Fried to stay at the top of your rotation. But with that being said, that'll do it for this episode of Georgia Sports Nation. Thanks to Matt for coming on. Frequent talker on We Talk Hawks TV. Make sure to go check those guys out as well. Post-game show after every Hawks game. For me, there'll be another Georgia Sports Nation episode next Thursday. They'll be on Thursdays now at 5:30. So make sure to note that schedule change. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.